The committee meets this morning to consider the nomination of Dr. Ashton B. Carter to be the Secretary of Defense, and there are standard questions that by committee rule that I would put forth to Dr. Carter at this time. Dr. Carter, in order to exercise its legislative and oversight responsibilities, it's important that this committee and other appropriate committees of the Congress are able to receive testimony, briefings, and other communication of information. Have you adhered to applicable laws and regulations governing conflicts of interest?
I have.
Have you assumed any duties or undertaken any actions which would appear to presume the outcome of the confirmation process?
No.
Will you ensure that your staff complies with deadlines established for requested communications, including questions for the record and hearings?
I will.
Will you cooperate in providing witnesses and briefers in response to congressional requests?
Yes.
Will those witnesses be protected from reprisal for their testimony or briefings?
They will.
Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear and testify upon request before this committee?
Yes.
Do you agree to provide documents, including copies of electronic forms of communications, in a timely manner when requested by a duly constituted committee, or to consult with the committee regarding the basis for any good faith delay or denial in providing such documents?
Yes.
What's that?
You're good. Those are all. Yes, sir. It was just the standard for civilians.
Which one?
You're good.
That concludes our routine questions that we ask of the nominees. And so, before the committee proceeds to the business before us today, on behalf of all members of the committee, we'd like to extend our deepest condolences to the family of the brave Jordanian pilot brutally murdered at the hands of ISIL. Together with his family, the Jordanian Armed Forces, and the people of Jordan, we mourn the loss of a hero that has galvanized the nation and the world. I hope this heinous crime finally leads us to put in place what thus far has been lacking: a comprehensive strategy to achieve the President's stated goal to degrade and destroy ISIL. Let there be no doubt, we still do not have a viable strategy to counter ISIL, and if you're not winning in war, you are losing. America has no greater ally in the fight against terrorism than Jordan, and as we made clear to King Abdullah in our meeting yesterday, this committee's immediate concern is to ensure Jordan has all the equipment and resources necessary to continue taking the fight directly to ISIL. Many of us on this committee will be sending a letter to the administration on this urgent issue of concern, and we invite all of our fellow committee members to join us on that letter. I think there was a consensus on both sides yesterday after the meeting with King Abdullah that we would send a letter out this morning. That letter will be distributed to the members so for your perusal and signature, so we can get that letter out as soon as possible. And I thank all members of the committee for their cooperation. And I'd also like to add that if legislation is required in order to achieve the goals that King Abdullah articulated to us yesterday as absolutely necessary to defend his nation, we will be considering that legislation as well as soon as possible, and I thank all members. The Senate Armed Services Committee meets today to consider the nomination of Dr. Ashton B. Carter to be Secretary of Defense. At the outset, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to Chuck Hagel for his years of service as an infantry sergeant in Vietnam, as a United States Senator from Nebraska, and as our nation's 24th Secretary of Defense. Chuck Hagel is a patriot and honorable public servant, and during his leadership of the Pentagon, the men and women of our armed services have had a true ally who always put their interests first. This committee wishes Chuck the best in his future endeavors. Dr. Carter, even in the best of times, the position for which you have been nominated is one of the most challenging in government. So I'd like to thank your wife, Stephanie, and your children, Will and Ava, for being here today and for loaning you to our nation in service once again. Dr. Carter is one of America's most respected and experienced defense professionals. He has served as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Global Strategic Affairs, Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics, and most recently as Deputy Secretary of Defense. In these positions, I have known him, and members of the committee have known him to be an honest, hardworking, and committed public servant. I've had the opportunity to work together with Dr. Carter on several issues of shared concern, especially trying to reform the defense acquisition system, improving financial management of the department, and rolling back sequestration. And on these and other issues facing the nation, we all look forward to having you as our partner once more, Dr. Carter. But I must candidly express concern about the task that awaits you if confirmed and the influence you would have on some of the most critical national security issues facing our nation. Two of your predecessors, Secretary Gates and Secretary Panetta, have severely criticized White House micromanagement of the Defense Department and over-centralization of foreign and defense policy. According to numerous news reports, Secretary Hagel experienced similar frustrations with the insular and indecisive White House National Security Team over issues ranging from ISIL to Ukraine, detention policy to sequestration. Dr. Carter, I sincerely hope the President who nominated you will empower you to lead and contribute to the fullest extent of your abilities, because at a time of multiplying threats to our security, America needs a strong Secretary of Defense now more than ever. America is confronted today with a diverse and complex range of national security challenges. Iran is on the march in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and elsewhere across the Middle East. ISIL continues to expand its influence and control of territory, as the new director of Defense Intelligence Agency recently testified to Congress. A revisionist Russia and a rising China, each seek in their own ways, presents challenges to the liberal international order as we've known it since the end of World War II, a system that cherishes the rule of law, maintains free markets and free trade, and relegates wars of aggression to their rightful place in the bloody past. Amid the present upheaval and conflict, American disengagement can only produce more turmoil and increase in the chance of large-scale American interventions at greater cost in blood and treasure. That's why we need a coherent national security strategy incorporating all elements of America's national power to sustain and defend the international order that has produced and extended security, prosperity, and liberty across the globe. But crafting a reality-based national security strategy is simply impossible under the mindless mechanism of sequestration. Despite the growing array of complex threats to our security, we're on track to cut $1 trillion out of America's defense budget by 2021. Readiness is falling across the services, and morale is falling right along with it. Army and Marine Corps in strength is dropping dangerously low. The Air Force is the oldest and smallest it's ever seen. The Navy's fleet is shrinking to pre-World War I levels. And last week, each of our service chiefs testified before this committee that American lives are being put at risk due to sequestration. Sequestration represents a failure to meet our most basic constitutional responsibility to provide for the common defense. America's military can no longer be held hostage to domestic political disputes, totally separated from the reality of the threats we face. More than 3 years after the passage of the Budget Control Act, it's time to put an end to this senseless policy. Rolling back sequestration is necessary to provide our military the strategy-driven budget necessary to confront the threats we face. But it will never be enough without reforming how the department procures major weapon systems. Many of our military's challenges today are the results of years of mistakes and wasted resources. For example, over here, the Army's Future Combat System was initially estimated to be a $92 billion project to modernize into a cohesive network, new Army vehicles and radios. But it more than doubled its price to $200 billion without ever getting off the ground. Secretary Gates and Congress wisely canceled Future Combat Systems, but only after spending $20 billion with nothing to show for it. Between these four systems, the next chart up there, please. Between these four systems, Future Combat Systems, Expeditionary Fighting Vehicle, Comanche Helicopter, and the VH-71 presidential helicopter, we spent $40 billion with nothing to show for it. That's $40 billion of training and equipment our military doesn't have today to confront the threats we face. The problem continues today. The cost of the evolved expendable launch vehicle has exploded from around $100 million per launch to $400 million per launch over the last 15 years after the Air Force allowed years of sole source contracts, while, especially over the last few months, actively keeping out any other companies from competing. Hopefully this year we will see the Air Force certify a new entrant, and this competition can finally bring down costs and end our reliance on Russian rocket engines. Like many programs that preceded it, LCS's cost overruns followed predictably from a chronic lack of planning from its very outset in three key areas: undefined requirements, unrealistic initial cost estimates, and unreliable assessments of technological and integration risks. The Gerald Ford-class nuclear aircraft carrier was originally supposed to cost $10.5 billion. It will now cost $12.9 billion, a $2.4 billion increase, and we have no assurance such increases will not plague the follow-on ships. This is unacceptable. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter was originally estimated to cost around $220 billion to research and engineer and build 2,800 airplanes. Now we're going to spend more than $330 billion, a 50% increase, to buy 400 fewer airplanes. Even more astounding than the amount of money squandered and wasted is the fact that in each of the weapons system cases I have mentioned, no individual has been held responsible for these massive cost overruns and egregious acquisition failures. And the result has been the slow degradation of America's defense technological advantage, which we will lose altogether if we persist with business as usual in our acquisition policies. This must change. It will be a priority for this committee and for me personally to change it. Dr. Carter, I look to you as a partner in all of these endeavors. If confirmed, I hope you will provide independent leadership and work closely with the Congress on the issues that matter most, crafting a coherent national security strategy to meet today's threats, rolling back sequestration, continuing to reform the defense acquisition process, modernizing our military compensation system, and many others. I thank you deeply for your willingness to serve once again, and I look forward to your testimony today. Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me join you in extending our condolences to the family of the brave Jordanian pilot and to the people of Jordan. And let me welcome Dr. Carter and thank him for his willingness to once again serve the nation. I also want to welcome Stephanie and Ava and Will and thank them for their sacrifice and service to the nation. And let me also recognize my colleague and friend Joe Lieberman. Thank you, Senator, for being here today. Dr. Carter is the former Deputy Secretary of Defense and Undersecretary for Acquisition Technology and Logistics. You are uniquely qualified to lead the Department of Defense at a time when, as Henry Kissinger said last week here, the United States has not faced a more diverse and complex array of crises since the end of the Second World War. If confirmed as Secretary of Defense, you will be advising the President, leading the Defense Department, and working with our allies on a staggering number of complex international challenges to our national interests. Iran. While the Secretary of Defense is not a party to the negotiations relating to Iran's nuclear program, the Secretary will undoubtedly be responsible for any number of potential contingencies relating to the consequences of different outcomes to these negotiations. In the event of a breakdown in the negotiations, the consequences could alter the face of the region for generations and generations. ISIL. ISIL's depraved and violent campaign in Iraq and Syria to establish an extremist caliphate threatens to erase borders, destabilize the region, and create a breeding ground for foreign fighters willing to return to the West to carry out attacks against the United States' interest. The Department must provide critical leadership in a coalition effort that includes Arab and Muslim states to degrade and defeat ISIL while being careful to ensure that the U.S. does not end up owning the conflict in Syria and elsewhere. Afghanistan. The The hard-won gains of the past decade are significant, but remain fragile. With Afghan security, our forces are taking over, the Afghan forces are taking over responsibility for combating the Taliban and securing Afghanistan. However, the United States forces, with our coalition partners, must transition to a more limited mission of training and assisting the Afghan forces and conducting counterterrorism operations. Yet it remains to be seen whether conditions on the ground in Afghanistan will improve sufficiently by the end of 2016 to warrant the pace of further reductions under the current plan. Ukraine. Russia's aggression against Ukraine challenges order and progress in Europe. In the past few days, separatists in eastern Ukraine with substantial Russian equipment, training, and leadership have abandoned any pretext of a ceasefire and launched a broad offensive against Ukrainian forces. The United States must determine how to best support the Ukrainian forces and people in defending their country. Cyber. For years now, we have devoted significant attention to the looming and complex challenge of cyber warfare. The attack on the Sony Corporation of America, however, was in important respects a watershed event that should stimulate fresh, critical thinking. This attack demonstrates that a relatively small and weak rogue nation can reach across the oceans to cause extensive destruction of a U.S.-based economic target and very nearly succeed in suppressing freedom of expression through cyberspace. The real and manifest advantages of the offense over the defense in cyber warfare that enabled military inferior nations to strike successfully against the homeland is a new and worrisome factor for national security. These issues are only a few of the external challenges facing the Defense Department, but there are also significant internal challenges that must be addressed. Sequestration. Last week, before this committee, General Mattis said, "No foe in the field can wreak such havoc on our security that mindless sequestration is achieving today." General Odierno informed this committee that only one-third of Army brigades are ready to fight. General Welch testified that less than 50% of our combat squadrons are fully combat ready. Sequestration threatens not only our national security, but risks damage to our public safety, health, transportation, education, and the environment. While the Department manages through these difficult fiscal realities, Congress must find a balanced and bipartisan solution and a repeal of sequestration. Rising costs, and the Chairman has alluded to this very succinctly and very directly. Even without sequestration, the Defense Department would have to tackle rising costs, including personnel costs, which consume a third of the Defense Department's budget. Yesterday, this committee heard the testimony of the Military Compensation and Retirement Committee. Their recommendations are far-reaching and would fundamentally change military personnel benefits. But these recommendations must be carefully considered because changes must occur to ensure the Department can properly train and equip its fighting men and women. The other major cost driver in the Defense Department is acquisition. While the Department has implemented significant acquisition reforms, many under your leadership, defense acquisition still takes too long and costs too much. We can and we should do more to streamline and improve the system. And finally, but most importantly, if confirmed as Secretary of Defense, you will be leading 1.3 million active duty military, 820,000 reserve and guard, and 773,000 civilians. They are tired and overtaxed from a decade of war and years of fiscal uncertainty. They are wrestling with the same issues as civilian society, issues like sexual assault and suicide. Yet they are committed to protecting this nation and remain the finest force in the world. Dr. Carter, I look forward to discussing these and other issues with you, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Senator Reid. I note the presence of our beloved friend and former colleague, a member of this committee since the Coolidge administration, and we're very happy to have him here this morning, our beloved friend Joe Lieberman. Senator Lieberman.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and it was a great comfort to me when I arrived during the Coolidge administration to find that you had already been here several years. I must say I'm delighted to be here, and it's really somewhat sentimental for me to be here. I appreciate very much the opportunity. It's a privilege for me to appear before the Senate Armed Services Committee today to introduce Dr. Ash Carter. This is not the first time I have had this privilege. In fact, it is the third time. The first was on March 26, 2009, when Ash was nominated to be Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics. Second was on September 13, 2011, when he was nominated to be Deputy Secretary of Defense. So today, I suppose I could say I don't think I've ever been so pleased to be asked to repeat myself. as I am honored to have been by Ash Carter to introduce him to you as President Obama's nominee to be the 25th Secretary of Defense of the United States of America. Ash Carter graduated from Yale College summa cum laude with a unique combination of majors, physics and medieval history. During his time as a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford, he temporarily resolved the question of, which was on everyone's mind, I'm sure, about whether he was primarily a historian or a physicist. He earned a doctorate at Oxford in theoretical physics. Nevertheless, to confound observers and prognosticators, he went on to become the chair of the International and Global Affairs faculty at Harvard at the John F. Kennedy School of Government and co-director of the Preventive Defense Project at the Kennedy School's Belfer Center. Mr. Chairman, Senator Reid, it would really be hard to find someone to serve as Secretary of Defense who combines as much practical Pentagon experience with so deep a background in national security policy as Ash Carter. The fact that you have convened this morning to consider his nomination means that the talents and abilities of a brilliant and extraordinary strategic thinker and public servant and administrator can again be put to use for our nation. It also means, as you've said, that Ash Carter has again chosen, with the support of his wife and family, to answer the call to duty to serve our country. Over the past 30 years, Dr. Carter has worked directly or indirectly for virtually every Secretary of Defense, no matter the political party of the Secretary. He knows the department he has been asked to lead very well, and therefore can begin leading it on day one. From 1993 to 1996, Ash served as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Policy. During that time, he worked on the landmark Nunn-Lugar Arms Control Program, and I got to know him when we traveled together with Secretary of Defense Bill Perry and Senators Nunn and Lugar to the former Soviet Union to observe them destroying nuclear submarines and dismantling missiles and missile sites as part of Nunn-Lugar. I think we actually bonded personally at one dinner hosted by the high command of the Russian military, in which I believe it's accurate to say that Ash and I were the only two members of the American delegation to keep up with the vodka toasts of friendship with our Russian colleagues. When I think back to those days, and you think of what's happening in Russia today and what Russia is doing outside its borders, those memories are really quite poignant. Too much has changed for the worse. But in thinking about introducing Ash today, he's done so much. It's important to note that he spearheaded some developments during that period of time, particularly the removal of nuclear weapons from Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Belarus, which, needless to say, have and continue to make our world a lot safer than it would otherwise be. Speaking of travel, Ash had the good judgment, Mr. Chairman, to come with us several times to the Munich Security Conference. And I must say, watching him there, I was impressed by the range and depth of his relationships with the top level of particularly military, but also foreign policy leaders of our European allies in NATO. I would say, and I would guess that members of the committee would agree, that Ash Carter's most important contributions during his past Pentagon service have been in American lives saved on the battlefield. He was the driving force in providing 6,500 MRAP vehicles to our troops in Afghanistan in record time, an action that saved many lives and gave our troops the confidence that there was someone in Washington who was working for them. Ash Carter's fierce dedication to our warfighters is well known, and I think will be one of his greatest legacies. More broadly, the improvements he brought about in the Pentagon acquisitions process show his mastery of this complex and critical field and will make him an excellent partner for you, Mr. Chairman, in the continuing work that I know you, Senator Reid, and this committee want to do to improve defense procurement. Dr. Carter's service on boards and commissions includes the Defense Science Board, the Defense Policy Board, the Secretary of State's International Security Advisory Board, and the Congressional Commission on the Strategic Posture of the United States. Ash Carter has been accurately described as a man for all seasons, a man of enormous talents and experiences. It is also true that he has made choices in his life about how he has used his talents and experiences. He has chosen to go where his intellect, his values, and his patriotism have called him. We are fortunate indeed that President Obama has nominated Dr. Carter to be our next Secretary of Defense. And if I may say so, the President is fortunate that he will have so experienced a leader at the Pentagon and so wise an advisor in the inner councils of this administration, all of which explains why I'm so truly honored to introduce Ashton Carter to this great committee at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Lieberman. We're always glad to have you here, and if you'd like to take a seat on the dais, we welcome it. Dr. Carter, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Reid, all the distinguished members of this committee. Thank you all. Thank you for inviting me to appear before you as President Obama's nominee to be Secretary of Defense. I'm honored by his trust and confidence, and also by the prospect of serving, once again, the troops and the country that I love so much. If confirmed, I will take the office of Secretary of Defense after one of our nation's most honorable and conscientious public servants, Chuck Hagel. I worked for Secretary Hagel, and I've known him for decades, though not over all of the many decades he served our country. Among the many traits I admire in Secretary Hagel is the tireless care with which he carried out the most solemn duty of a Secretary of Defense, which is to the relatively few brave young men and women who defend the rest of us. I also thank Senator Lieberman for his warm and generous introduction. As he noted, it's not the first time he's done so, but especially for his service to this body and to the nation over many years. Thank you, sir. My perfect wife, Stephanie, and wonderful children, Will and Ava, are behind me, as they always are every day, and I thank them. The President frequently notes that America has the greatest fighting force the world has ever known. To the men and women of the Department of Defense who make it so, and to this committee, which watches over them, I pledge that if I'm confirmed as Secretary of Defense, to keep faith with the dedication that brought them into service, to ensure that their training and equipment are as superb as they are, that the well-being, safety, and dignity of each of them and their families is fostered and respected, and that decisions about when and where they are sent into harm's way are made with the greatest reflection and care. The principal reason that Stephanie and I made a U-turn in our life to accept the offer of nomination is our respect and devotion to them. To Chairman, members of the committee, I'll be brief. If confirmed as Secretary of Defense, my responsibilities would be to protect America and its friends and allies in a turbulent and dangerous world. At the same time, I never lose sight of the fact that the United States remains the strongest, most resilient, and most influential nation on earth. We do indeed have the finest fighting force the world has ever known. We have an innovative economy that has long set the pace for the rest of the world. Our country has friends and allies in every corner of the world, and our adversaries have few. This is clear testimony to the appeal of our values, our principles, and our leadership. All this makes me proud and hopeful and determined to grab hold of the bright opportunities in front of us, as well as to counter the very real dangers we face. These dangers, as the chairman has noted, include continuing turmoil in the Middle East and North Africa and the malignant and savage terrorism emanating from it, an ongoing war in Afghanistan, the reversion to old-style security thinking in parts of Europe, the long-standing tensions from the past and the rapid changes in Asia, and the continuing need for the stabilizing role of the United States in that region, which is so important to the future. The continuing imperative to counter the spread of our use of weapons of mass destruction, and new dangers in new domains, like cyber, as noted by Senator Reid. Strategy needs to keep all these problems in perspective and to craft lasting approaches to each of them. I have promised President Obama that if I am confirmed, I will furnish him my most candid strategic advice. In formulating that advice, I intend to confer widely among civilian and military leaders, including on this committee, experts and foreign partners. And when the President makes a decision, I will also ensure that the Department of Defense implements it with its long-admired excellence. I will also ensure that the President receives candid professional military advice. This is not only consonant with the law as written in this very committee, but with good sense, since our military leaders possess wide and deep experience and expertise. The law also prescribes the chain of command, and if I'm confirmed as Secretary of Defense, I will be a stickler for the chain of command. I'd also like to say a word about the defense budget. Chairman, members of the committee, I very much hope that we can find a way together out of the wilderness of sequester. Sequester is risky to our defense. It introduces turbulence and uncertainty that are wasteful. And it conveys a misleadingly diminished picture of our power in the eyes of friends and foes alike. I'm not familiar with the details of the 2016 budget submitted just a couple days ago, and if confirmed, I will come back here for a full posture hearing to discuss them. But I strongly support the President's request for relief from sequester caps in 2016 and through the future year defense plan. If confirmed, I will do my part to assist the President in working with Congress to resolve the overall issues of the country's fiscal future, of which the defense budget is a part. But I cannot suggest support and stability for the defense budget without at the same time frankly noting that not every defense dollar is spent as well as it should be. The taxpayer cannot comprehend it, let alone support the defense budget, when they read, as the chairman has noted, of cost overruns, lack of accounting and accountability, needless overhead, and the like. This must stop. Every company, state, and city in the country has had to lean itself out in recent years. and it should be no different for the Pentagon. And in this matter, I know I'm echoing Chairman McCain, Senator Reid, and this committee, which has long called for and taken concrete action on reform of acquisition and other parts of the defense enterprise in the Weapons System Acquisition Reform Act of 2009, and before that, dating back to the Packard Commission and the Goldwater-Nichols Act. I began my own career in defense in connection with the implementation of the Packard Commission's recommendations. The issues and solutions change over time as technology and industry change. They extend from acquisition, which was highlighted by the chairman in programs like Future Combat Systems and the Presidential Helicopter, which I canceled. I signed the cancellation orders for in 2009, to the Ford aircraft carrier, which Senator McCain also noted, which was not satisfactorily solved and still not. Its overruns, and I agree with the chairman in that regard. We've got a lot of work to do. The issues and solutions for acquisition reform change over time as technology and industry change, as I noted. They extend from acquisition, and this is important, to all other parts of the defense budget: force size, compensation, and training, as well as equipment. If confirmed as Secretary of Defense, I pledge to make needed change in the Pentagon, but also to seek support from Congress, because I know that in the end, Congress holds the power of the purse. I look forward to partnership with this committee in what can be a period of historic advance. Mr. Chairman, Senator Reid, members of the committee, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come before you. If confirmed, I will seek out your thoughts, perspectives, and combat experiences to help me do the best job. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carter, and we will have multiple rounds, but we'll have short ones, 5 minutes, because that'll give more opportunity for members to ask questions. And in about an hour, Dr. Carter needs a short break. As we all know, he's recovering from recent surgery. So we'll take a break then for as long as you need, and we will go into this afternoon so that all members are able to ask sufficiently the questions that they have. And to start with, Dr. Carter, members of this committee met with King Abdullah yesterday. He made a graphic statement about needing some weapons and the difficulties he's having with those. And we will be signing a letter this morning. And as I said, it may require some legislation. But are you aware of the problems that Jordanians are having with acquiring some of the weapons that they need?
I'm not, Mr. Chairman. I learned of them this morning as well, and if I'm confirmed, I definitely want to find out what they are and resolve them, because we need partners on the ground to beat ISIS, and the Jordanian people have clearly reacted the way that encourages us to support them in combating what is really a savage and nasty.
Thank you. Last week, General Mattis was before this committee. He said in Afghanistan, we need to consider if we're asking the same outcome there as we saw last summer in Iraq, should we pull out all our troops on the administration's proposed timeline, and the gains achieved at great cost against our enemy in Afghanistan are reversible? General Keane said, all we accomplished in Afghanistan will be at risk as if it was in Iraq if the troops are pulled out not based on the conditions on the ground. How can we not learn the obvious and painful lessons from Iraq? Do you have a position on the withdrawal from Iraq? Do you believe that it should be calendar-based as it is now, or should we be looking at the conditions on the ground to base those decisions?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and also thank you for your consideration about the back. I appreciate that. The campaign in Afghanistan has been close to my heart for all the time that I've been associated with the Department of Defense. I've been there a number of times. I think that success is possible there, but as you indicate, requires the United States to continue its campaign and finish the job. I understand we have a plan. The President has a plan. I support that plan. At the same time, it's a plan. And if I'm confirmed and I ascertain as the years go by that we need to change that plan, I will recommend those changes to the President.
Well, all I can say is it's not a matter of years. It's a matter of weeks, actually, because one of the major withdrawals is going to start this coming June. And so I hope that you will assess that as quickly and as carefully as possible. In his testimony to the committee this week, Dr. Kissinger said, quote, "In the Middle East, a multiple of evils are unfolding simultaneously. Iran has exploited this turmoil to pursue positions of power within other countries." Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do.
Do you believe that we need to have a strategy to combat ISIS and the continued successes in many respects that they are achieving?
Absolutely.
Do you believe we have a strategy at this time?
I believe I understand our strategy at this time, Mr. Chairman. I also have the intention, again, if confirmed, to make it my first priority to go there, to talk to our leaders, military leaders there, to confer with you.
What do you understand the strategy to be?
And to, I think the a strategy connects ends and means, and our ends with respect to ISIL needs to be its lasting defeat. I say lasting because it's important that when they get defeated, they stay defeated. And that is why it's important that we have those on the ground there who will ensure that they stay defeated once defeated. It's different on the two sides of the border. It's one enemy, but it's two different contexts. Mr. Chairman, in Iraq, the force that will keep them defeated is the Iraqi security forces. Our strategy is to strengthen them and to make them that force. On the Syrian side, not to take too long about it, we are trying to build the force that will keep them defeated, and that's going to be a combination of moderate Syrian forces and regional forces.
Well, it doesn't sound like a strategy to me, but maybe we can flesh out your goals. It sounds like a series of goals to me. Do you believe we should be supplying arms, defensive arms, to Ukrainians?
I very much incline in that direction, Mr. Chairman, because I think we need to support the Ukrainians in defending themselves. The nature of those arms I can't say right now because I haven't conferred with our military leaders or Ukrainian leaders, but I incline in the direction of providing them with arms, including to get to what I'm sure your question is, lethal arms.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carter. Senator Reed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. One way to evolve a strategy is to first look at the threat. So let's, the Middle East. Do you believe the most immediate threat there to U.S. interest in the region is ISIL?
I hesitate to say ISIL only because in the back of my mind is Iran as well. So I think that we have two immediate substantial dangers in the Middle East. One is ISIL and one is Iran.
In terms of our current military operations, they are clearly directed at ISIL. Is that the appropriate response at this moment to the threats in the region?
It is.
And as you point out, there are two theaters. One is Iraq, where we have more traction, and the other is Syria. So you would think in terms of responding to the threat that our actions or our vigorous support of the current Iraqi government is appropriate in responding to this ISIL threat?
It is appropriate if as I said, whether and how to improve it will be my first job if I'm confirmed as Secretary of Defense.
One of the issues, particularly with respect to Iraq, is that not only improvement, as you suggest in your comments, the long-term defeat of ISIL rests not just on military operations, but on political arrangements. And what we've witnessed in Iraq particularly, it was a political arrangement that consciously and deliberately degraded the Sunni population. At least that's their perception, and gave rise. So would you acknowledge that part of our strategy has to be constituting an Iraqi government that is perceived by its own people as being a bit fairer and inclusive?
Absolutely. That's what the previous government of Iraq did not do, and that was instrumental in their military collapse.
And one of the issues that complicates, and you pointed out in terms of Iran being a strategic issue for the United States in the region, is their relative influence in Iraq and throughout the region was enhanced over the last several years by the government in Iraq, by the Maliki government. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, yes.
So we are now in a position of trying to essentially contain the regional ambitions of the Iranians and kinetically defeat the Sunni radical Islamists. Is that the strategy?
Yes, that sounds right.
And you understand that, and that to you is a coherent strategy?
It is, yes.
Now, that means that, you're prioritizing, or the administration is prioritizing these actions you've talked about and building, over time, a capability in Syria. In terms of using your scarce resources in addressing the most serious threats, is that a coherent response in your mind?
I think it is the beginning of a strategic response. I think that, as I noted, on the Syrian side of the border, the assembling of the force that is going to keep ISIL defeated, we're in an early stage of trying to build that force. We are participating in the building of that force, but I think it's fair to say that we're at an earlier stage there. On the Iraqi side, we have the existing Iraqi security forces.
Let me,
Senator Reid,
please.
if I can just note one other thing. It may be something I missed in your line of questioning. There is an issue looming over this, which is the role of Iran, in the whole region, which is why I pointed that out at the beginning. That is a serious complication.
I agree. Let me turn to the issue of Ukraine, which the chairman raised the issue of providing weapon systems to defend or allow the Ukrainians to defend themselves. But weapon systems have to be clearly differentiated from a commitment of American military personnel. Would that be a clear line of demarcation that you would draw?
Excuse me, I was suggesting the provision of equipment to the Ukrainian military, yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carter, for your service, and Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Senator Wicker.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your testimony, Dr. Carter. I look forward to supporting your confirmation and look forward to working with you. At a point some 2 or 3 years ago, the Pentagon, along with the administration, made a decision to rebalance to the Asia-Pacific. So I want to ask you about that. Would you agree that our challenges with regard to an expansionist Russian agenda, the situation in Eastern Europe and other areas near the former Soviet Union have become more challenging, and that also our challenges in the Middle East are more problematic now than when the decision was made to pivot to the Asia-Pacific?
You're absolutely right. The issues in the Middle East and in Ukraine have developed since we first formulated that rebalance. It's true.
And to the extent that, well, tell me this. How do you understand, as a prospective Secretary of Defense, the rebalancing to the Asia-Pacific will actually work? And can we afford to move resources from Europe and the Middle East to the Asia-Pacific, given the circumstances that we see today in 2015?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. The rebalance to the Asia-Pacific region, as the term goes, is, in my eyes, a commitment to continue the pivotal American military role in the Asia-Pacific theater, which has kept peace and stability there for decades now. It has been that American underwritten peace and stability in a region where there are still many historical animosities and unhealed wounds of the past. It is that stability underwritten by the United States that has allowed the Japanese miracle, then the South Korean miracle, then the Southeast Asian miracle, and today the Chinese and Indian miracle. It is thanks to us that environment has been created. And in a sentence, I think the rebalance is a commitment to keep that going. Now, you ask, can we do that and keep our commitments in the Middle East and to Europe at the same time? And my view is that we can and must. And let me say why that's possible. I think that while ISIL and events in Ukraine are terribly important in their own regard and require a lot of attention and take a lot of attention, they're on the television, they're in the headlines and so forth, and the Asia-Pacific is not. We have to remember that half the population of the world and half of its economy is in that region, and our military presence there, the naval presence, the air presence, our allies and partnerships, finding new allies, building new partnerships, conducting exercises, those things can be done at the same time that we're doing what we need to do in Ukraine and that we're doing what we need to do in Iraq and Syria. So I think the world needs to know the United States can do more than one thing at once, and we can keep our commitments there.
Is it going to be necessary to move resources from the Middle East and from concern over Europe and Russia to the Asia-Pacific, to move resources? Sounds like you're proposing a continuation of a longstanding, ongoing policy.
Well, it is a long-standing, ongoing policy, but to keep the American military predominance in the Asia-Pacific requires us continually to modernize and add to what we have there. We're adding ships, we're adding electronic warfare, that is, we're improving our forces qualitatively, we're investing in them, a new bomber, which is importantly intended for that theater, which I think is very important. So we're buying new capabilities that won't necessarily have a role in the Middle East or in NATO, but are principally designed for that theater, and I think we need to keep those investments going.
You don't advocate a diminishment of the resources we're spending with regard to the Middle East or Russia and Europe at this point, do you?
Now, I think we need to keep our investments going. When it comes to day-to-day employments, and I don't want to get into too much detail here, but I'm sure you know this. When it comes to day-to-day deployments and the location of ships and so forth, we do move back and forth between the Gulf and the Pacific. And so there is some trade-off there on a day-to-day basis. But in terms of our fundamental investments in new capabilities and remaining ahead of any other military opponent, including in Asia, and in our building and strengthening our alliances with Japan, with South Korea, with the Philippines, with Australia, with Thailand, and new partnerships with other countries like India. We need to keep all that going. It's an important part of the world.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you and your family, and I also want to thank Secretary Hagel for his service as Secretary of Defense and to our nation. He took the point in Vietnam. He took the point for our Defense Department, and we're grateful for what he's done. I was privileged to travel with some other senators recently to the Middle East, and we talked to a number of the nations there. And I just want to make sure that, in your mind, do you believe when we look at ISIS, our goal should be to eliminate them on a permanent basis?
Yes, I do.
Well, one of my concerns is time. And what I mean by that is when you look at the map of where they were a year ago, where they are now, they've substantially grown. And so we have windows that we're working in. And when we look at our plan, I'm concerned about how, when you look at the depth and the size of our plan, that what it really does, they have 30,000, we're talking hundreds. It gives them time to grow even more. And you worry about a tipping point where X crosses Y, and they become much more difficult. So what kind of time plan are you looking at to get movement on this?
I think it's important to strike back at ISIL as we're doing from the air, but to begin to retake territory as soon as we can build the forces on the ground, which will be local forces, that are capable of sustaining defeat when we have achieved defeat in a given location. So I hope that in coming months, and I'm not in a position to have any special information about this or talk to our commanders or so forth, but it's my understanding that in coming months, the Iraqi security forces, assisted by us, will begin to take back territory from ISIL. And I think you're right that it's important to get that territory back soon, because you don't want them to settle in, and you don't want the population to settle into having ISIL rule them in their barbaric way.
And when we talked to the king yesterday and to others in the region, what they said is, we're not asking you to fight our battle, but we need you as a partner, shoulder to shoulder, to help us train, to help us plan, to help us implement. Is that what you see our ground role as?
Yes, I think exactly right. You're referring to the assistance we provide to the Jordanians, if I understand the question.
Right, and
Absolutely.
to the other nations are looking at the same thing.
That's right.
One of the things we had testimony on yesterday was in regards to, switching themes a little bit, the DOD and the VA with drug formularies. We lost 479 young men and women to suicide in 2013 who were in the military. We lost 132 in combat. We don't want to lose any more. So part of what General Corelli was telling us is that with the drug formularies, it causes dramatic change for those who are coming off and going into the VA. All of a sudden they look up, they're being forced on different drugs and stuff. As Secretary of Defense, are there things you can do to help us with that?
I think there definitely are and must be. I think the relationship between the Department of Defense and the Department of Veterans Affairs has to be a relationship like this, because it's one soldier. They cross the boundary from one to the other when they move and become a veteran, but it's one soldier. And so I am familiar, or that is, I remember from years back when I was in the department, of this question of the different formularies. People DOD calls a drug one thing and VA calls it another thing, and they have one set of dosages and the other.
And our troops,
we've got to get these together. It's one patient. It's one.
They get lost in the shuffle.
Exactly.
And it's at a most critical time to them personally. And so your absolute commitment to that, and I know it is going to be critical. I wanted to ask you one other thing, as I'm starting to get a little short on time, and that is your expertise in the nuclear area. And I was wondering if you are familiar with a report issued by Madeleine Creedon and Rear Admiral Fanta. They did a department-wide nuclear enterprise review. It is classified, but it is very sobering. And I just want to make sure that, I didn't know if you had seen it yet. If you have, will you take ownership of the issue and ensure its findings are addressed?
Thank you, Senator. I have not had access to that particular report, but with respect to the nuclear enterprise, I have a long history in that regard and am a strong believer in a safe, secure, and reliable nuclear arsenal for the United States. And that encompasses both the nuclear weapons themselves and the delivery systems of the Department of Defense and the command and control systems for it. So I can well understand if they're calling attention to the enduring need to make that a priority. That's another thing that's not in the newspapers every day. Thank God, nuclear weapons being used aren't in the newspapers every day, but it's a bedrock of our security, and we can never forget that. And so continuing quality and excellence in the nuclear enterprise is very important. I am committed to that.
Senator
Thank
Ayotte.
you.
I want to thank the chairman. I want to thank you, Dr. Carter, for all your service to the nation and your willingness to serve again. I would like to ask you about, according to the Director of National Intelligence, we know that at least 107 terrorists who were formerly detained at Guantanamo and then released have been confirmed of re-engaging in terrorism. And in fact, an additional 77 are also suspected of that. In fact, we know that public reports tell us that at least 2 Guantanamo detainees have also joined ISIS. And so what I would like to ask you, number one, there were reports that Secretary Hagel said that he was under pressure to increase the pace of transfers of Guantanamo detainees by the administration. And as you know, the statute says that you, as the incoming Secretary of Defense, will have to make the determination, and only if you determine that the actions, there's a whole set of factors, but in particular, you have to determine that actions that have been or are planned to be taken will substantially mitigate the risk of such an individual engaging or re-engaging in any terrorist or other hostile activity that threatens the United States or United States persons or our interests, or I would assume our allies as well. And so I would ask you, Secretary Carter, soon to be Secretary Carter, thank you, but I would ask you to tell us and to make a commitment to this committee that you will not succumb to any pressure by this administration to increase the pace of transfers from Guantanamo. Will you commit to that?
Absolutely. So.
And I would also ask you to commit to this committee that you will take with the utmost seriousness, because we had General Mattis before the committee the other day, and he expressed deep concern over the notion that one of our men and women in uniform could confront a terrorist that we had previously captured and the implications to them, that you will commit to this committee and to all of us that you will not allow the release of someone that you think could re-engage in terrorism so that our men and women in uniform will be confronted with them again.
I do, Senator. I understand my responsibilities under that statute, and I'll, as in everything else I do, I'll play it absolutely straight.
We appreciate that. That's very important because we have seen an accelerated release of detainees, and as you know, there have been public reports about one of the Taliban 5 re-engaging in terrorist activities. So this is something that I think is of utmost importance. The last thing that one of our men and women in uniform should confront is a terrorist that we had previously captured, and I know you agree with me on that.
Bet.
I wanted to follow up on the aid to Ukraine, and I really appreciate the comments that you made that you are inclined to support lethal aid to Ukraine. And when we met in my office, you had told me that you were actually there and involved in the signing of the Budapest Memorandum in 1994. Is that right?
That's right.
And so as you look at what's happening in Ukraine and having been there for the signing of that memorandum, what are the implications given that the Ukrainians gave up their nuclear weapons in return for the assurances not only from the United States of America, but Russia, who has clearly violated blatantly the Budapest Memorandum? If we don't support Ukraine, given that we do not want more nuclear proliferation around the world, I would assume that it would send the wrong message. If you give up your nuclear weapons and we don't provide you at least defensive weapons, why would any country give up their nuclear weapons again? Could you tell me what you think about the violation of that memorandum and the significance of it?
Thank you, Senator. It is a clear violation. I was there. I remember when that agreement was signed in Budapest in 1994. As I think Senator Lieberman said, I ran the Nunn-Lugar program during that period, and I was in Ukraine the day the last nuclear weapon rode across the border from Ukraine into Russia. And that agreement provided for Russia to respect the territorial integrity of Ukraine, which it is obviously not done. And that was part of the climate and context in which the Ukrainians agreed to give up nuclear weapons in the first place. And by the way, the United States took on a commitment in the very same agreement to respect, but also assure, as the phrase goes, the ability of Ukraine to find its own way as an independent country. That is at stake today. And that's why I think that we need to provide support to the Ukrainian government as they try to maintain a position, find their own way in Europe.
Thank you. My time is up, but I also think it's very important that we also get NATO, buttress our NATO support for the Baltics as well in all of this. Thank you.
Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Dr. Carter. As we met prior to this testimony, we covered a few issues, and I'm going to submit questions for the record since we won't be able to cover all of them, but they include military sexual assault, issues concerning combat integration, military compensation, cyber, Iran, and Syria. So I will send those so you can answer them in due course. But specifically, let's focus a little bit on the military sexual assault issue, which you know I am very passionate about trying to solve this scourge. One of the concerns I have is that last year we had 20,000 cases of sexual assault and unwanted sexual contact within the military. And I would like your view as to whether you believe that level of sexual assault today is still the good order and discipline we would want from our services.
No, Senator, it's not. And you used the word passion. I have the same passion you do. This problem of sexual assault is something that it persists in our military. It's widespread in our society, but it's particularly offensive in the military community because the military ethos is one of honor and trust. You have to trust the person who's, so to speak, in the foxhole next to you. These are violations of honor and trust. Also, in military life, we put people in positions, we put them in situations of austere deployment, of a situation where the hierarchy of military life is a necessity in battle. And these also provide opportunities, this context, military context, for predators. So it is more offensive in military life even than in civilian life, and we've got to root it out. And I know that many members of this committee, but you especially, Senator, have led in that regard, and I'm grateful for the thoughts and frankly for keeping the heat on. If I'm confirmed, I'll feel that heat and I'll understand it and be with it.
The one statistic I was particularly concerned about, the most recent report, is that of all those who were willing to report the assault openly, were retaliated against. 62% of those who reported these crimes were retaliated against, experienced some form of retaliation. So I'm highly concerned that the military is still failing in living up to their zero tolerance policy. Do you agree?
I do agree that retaliation is a dimension of the problem that, to me at least, is becoming increasingly apparent. This is a problem, if I may say, and you know this because you've worked so hard on it, but that the more we dig into it, the more dimensions of it we come to understand. And I think the idea that victims are retaliated against not only by the hierarchy above them, but by their peers is something that is unacceptable, that we have to combat also. And the survey that you refer to indicated that that is widespread, and we need to get at that.
I understand from your testimony that you place a premium on the chain of command, and I fully understand that for combat situations, the chain of command is not only essential, but necessary in every respect. I would like you to, though, consider all options for how you can reform the military justice system to actually professionalize it, make it more effective. And when our allies have reformed their military justice system to guarantee more civil liberties and to professionalize it and to take out biases, they've not seen diminution in the ability to train troops, to instill good order and discipline within the troops, and to do their jobs. I would ask you that you would keep an open mind to look at all possible solutions for improving our criminal justice system within the military.
I will.
Thank you. Another concern that I have is in terms of the issue of how we can create opportunities for women in combat. One of the issues that I have looked at is how are each of the services being able to open those positions, opening all positions to women in combat, because as you know, in order to become promoted within the military, oftentimes combat missions are required, and having certain roles that require combat is required for promotion. Are you committed to allowing women to serve in all positions and to gender-neutral standards for each of the services?
I'm certainly committed to gender-neutral standards. What I do know is this, that the services are examining whether there are any positions in the military that should not be open to women. I strongly incline towards opening them all to women, but I am also respectful of the circumstances and of professional military judgment in this regard. I've not been involved in those studies. If I am confirmed, I'd want to confer with our own leaders in the Department of Defense, with you and others who have thought carefully about that problem, and try to come to a view.
Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Dr. Carter, for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, Senator Lieberman, thank you for joining us today. As we sat down in my office the other day, one thing that hopefully was very clear to you was my passion for the National Guard and the Army Reserves and all reserve members, actually. And so we have spent a considerable amount of time talking in this forum about sequestration and the effects on our services, not just our active duty forces, but also those that serve as wonderful weekend warriors. So I would love for you to please address the panel and just talk to us and explain to us those impacts that you have seen regarding sequestration and how it has impacted those Reserve and National Guard forces, please.
Thank you, Senator. And by the way, thank you for your own service in that Guard. Appreciate it. And I'd begin by saying that we owe a great debt of gratitude to the Guard and Reserve for what they've done over the last 12, 13 years. We couldn't have done, I know this from the time I was in the Department of Defense previously, and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were at their peak. We couldn't have sustained the tempo of combat in those two locations without the contributions of the reserve component of our military. So if there's ever a time when their value was made clear, it's been in the last 10 to 12 years. And they are impacted, as every other part of the Defense Department is, by sequester. That's the terrible thing about sequester. It hits everybody, and it hits them hard, and it hits them soon, which means that we don't have time to adjust. So I think the Guard and Reserve component have borne the impact of sequester, as all the rest of the departments have, sad to say.
And thank you for that. I appreciate that. If confirmed, we do have a number of rising threats that we see all around the world, and specifically in the Middle East right now. So considering those threats, with many new possible deployments coming up, then if confirmed, how do we ensure that our Guard and Reserve units then maintain their ability to reinforce our active duty component as effectively as they have in the past dozen years? How do we ensure that they're being supported?
Thank you for that, and that is the key issue, as you well know. And I think that the reserve component forces need to be as prepared to go into action, if they're called to go into action, as any active duty element. I mean, you never want to send anybody into harm's way on behalf of the United States who hasn't had the training and isn't fully prepared and isn't adequately equipped to do the job. So I think it's important that the Guard and Reserve are at a state of readiness that is commensurate with the need we have for them. And one other thing I'll add is that they also, not incidentally at all, very importantly, play a role in responding to disasters in our own country. That's another important and, by the way, also amply demonstrated in recent years attribute of having them. So both for defense support to civil authorities and for deployment in a national security emergency, they need to be fully ready when we need them.
Thank you much, Dr. Carter, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Manchin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Dr. Carter, thank you so much for, first of all the service you've given, having such an esteemed senator introducing you. That shows your intelligence there. And next of all, willing to serve at this most difficult time. I appreciate all of that because I know how difficult it is. Let me go. We had an unusual day yesterday, and we got to speak to King Abdullah. And without revealing too much about, I'm sure that you've been briefed on that, but the bottom line was this. We're all concerned, I think, that our chairman's taking the lead on this, how we're going to accelerate what we do and what we think in this committee of how quick we can get necessary military equipment to the people willing to fight, and the Jordanians are willing to fight. And about the red tape, I just couldn't believe what I heard yesterday, all the red tape that they have to go through to get something on the front lines to help them defend themselves. I didn't hear so much they need our combat troops. They need our expertise and our people in the right places to make sure we're efficient. They just need the weapons to do the job. Do you have thoughts on that, or how you can help us on that and break through this gridlock?
I do, and I don't know what you heard, but I could well believe what you heard because I have a long experience of frustration with getting equipment to the warfighter, our warfighters, never mind partner warfighters, on time. This is an element that that is important when we talk about acquisition reform. The cost control is very important, but also getting things done. When I was working on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, it was, even for Americans, assistance to our own forces, way too much red tape stood in the way, and you had to constantly try to cut through that. And I guess in the context of the Jordanian circumstance, which I'm not familiar with, I'm sure you know more about it on the committee than I would as a nominee, but I do read the newspapers and I understand the need, and I can well believe that it's slower than King Abdullah finds acceptable, and that you and I would find acceptable. And I guess all I can say is, if I'm confirmed as Secretary of Defense, this is one I'm pretty familiar with, and I'd work to get those things out there the way we did MRAPs.
It seems like the greatest challenge is coming out of the State Department, and we're going to help and work on that, I think, and the Chairman's committed to that, and the ranking member and all of us are on the same page. This is not a partisan thing. This is basically an American thing we want to get done. If I can go to that, basically in the auditing, I'm very concerned about the cost of our military and if it's being spent efficiently. There's not a person in West Virginia, not a person in the country that won't sacrifice for a person in uniform. Not one. They'll give up something. They'll pay more taxes. They'll do whatever you ask them. But we've got to make sure we're spending it wisely, and I think that our chairman has been very diligent on this for many, many years, and I'm concerned. I'm also concerned, we don't touch on this, is the size of the staff. If you look at the size of the staff and how they double and quadruple, and every time we get a new change, the staff, and we don't talk about that, we just talk about our readiness and having people able to perform, but no one's checking the staff sizes. And I'm told from people on top, they don't need these sizes, but no one can get rid of them. Put them back on where they're needed, and also using our guard and reserves. But the staff size, that's something you will have oversight on?
It absolutely will. And I agree with you. We need acquisition reform, but we need reform lots of other things too. Overhead, headquarters staffs, lots of parts of the department, for just the reason you said.
And let me tell you why the audit is so important, why I'm so committed to having an audit of the Defense Department. I think we can help you help yourself of the institution. And the reason I say that is there's a lot of things that you're doing that sometimes you don't ask for, you don't want. There's equipment being sent your way. There's things being produced in different parts of the country just because of who we are. We want to make sure that our people are getting the jobs. I agree to that, but I can tell you, if there's something we're building in West Virginia you don't need, I'll be the first and go and tell them we're going to find something else to do. Because we're not going to force you to buy something you don't need or don't want. And I think we all have got to bite the bullet there, but we've got to look at this, and we won't know unless we have an audit. And I would hope that you're committed to helping us get that audit and a complete transparency of what's going on, and also the contractors. I cannot, I've been here 4 years, cannot get an accurate count of how many contractors that we have and what branches.
Thank you. I am committed on the audit front. I understand what you're saying about contractors and agree with that as well. And I appreciate what you say about us working together to make sure that we buy what we need and that we buy it well.
Thank you, sir.
We'll have Senator Sullivan, and then we'll take a break after that. How long do you need for? 15 minutes, and then after that, the next questioners would be Senator Heinrich, and then Senator Fisher, and then Senator Shaheen would be in line for the next questioners after a 15-minute break. Committee will stand in recess for 15 minutes.
Senator Sullivan.
After Senator Sullivan is
It'd be nice to be Irish.
finished with his question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Dr. Carter, I want to thank you for your service, and particularly, and you pointed out your family, your wife and kids. I know how much they go through in these hearings. Sometimes it's tougher on them than it is on the nominee, so I want to thank them as well. So I wanted to start with just a little history and geography. 1935, General Billy Mitchell, often referred to as the father of the Air Force, was testifying in front of Congress. He said that, quote, "I believe that in the future, whoever holds blank, this place, will hold the world. It is the most important strategic place in the world. It is the most central place in the world for aircraft, and that is true either of Europe, Asia, or North America." You know what place General Mitchell was referring to in his testimony in 1935?
I think, Senator, it was Alaska.
Correct, it was Alaska. Do you agree with General Mitchell?
I do. I'd point out that one proof of what he said, I suppose, is that your state is home to one of our principal missile defense batteries. And the reason for that is that it's kind of on the way to and from a lot of bad places.
Well, I look forward to hosting you in Alaska soon to show you why General Mitchell was correct. But I want to get actually to, if confirmed.
Excuse me, Senator Reid says maybe that's why he was court-martialed.
I think he may have had a drinking problem, but I'm not sure. His strategic assessment was still very correct. A tough part of your job is, as a member of the President's Cabinet, you also, critically important part of the job, if confirmed, is leveling with this committee, You're showing your kind of straightforward approach, which I think is great, but also with the American people. And I think we all recognize their challenges, but in some ways, you know, when the President's talking to the American people, his views seem to differ. Let me give you a few examples. In his State of the Union, he painted what I would consider a benign, almost delusional view of the world environment, with quotes like, "The shadow of crisis has passed. We're stopping ISIL's advance. We're opposing Russian aggression. We've halted the progress of Iran's nuclear program." These are all quotes from the President to the American people. Do you agree with his assessment in these areas?
I think that if I'm confirmed as Secretary of Defense, I'm going to be confronting some of the most challenging problems that we've had in our national security in a very long time. My intention, my obligation will be to help our President and help our country confront those problems and provide the advice to the President that will help him deal with what is though we have many efforts and many successes because we are the indispensable nation in this world, we have many challenges, and I think my role for him, if confirmed, is to help him work through these challenges.
But again, just in terms of straightforward approach, you've been watching the international environment. Do you agree with what the President was saying and telling the American people? I mean, I think it's critical that you level, the administration levels with the American people on our challenges. I'll give you another example. He's talking about ending combat operations in Afghanistan, and yet we're going to maintain a robust CT presence, which I think is important. But a robust CT presence is not ending combat operations. Do you agree with what the President was saying in his State of the Union on some of these specific quotes that I mentioned?
I certainly agree with the President's overall thrust. And
that we have a benign world environment right now?
I would say the world continues to pose serious challenges to international order, and that the United States is indispensable to the solution of those challenges. That's what I'd say.
Let me ask one final question. In the hearings the last 3 weeks that the Chairman has had, which have been, I think, a great education for all of us, again, for the American people, I think there was consensus that we certainly need to work on all instruments of American power, integrate those as part of a national strategy to address what I think are significant challenges that the President has not laid out. One of these instruments that we didn't have 10 years ago, but there was common agreement on, is energy, and being, once again, the world's energy superpower in terms of producing oil and gas and renewables. Last week, the President took over 20 million acres of some of the most prospective lands in America for oil and gas development off the table. Do you agree that having energy and using that to help our national security is important? And would you agree that taking such huge areas of land off the table, billions, potentially billions of barrels of oil, trillions of cubic feet of natural gas, you think that helps or undermines America's national security?
Well, I certainly think energy security is an important part of national security, and I'm incredibly encouraged by what the progress that the United States has made in developing new resources, both oil and gas in recent years. I think it's showing up in terms of our economy, and also it's showing up geopolitically. With respect to the particular issue you raised, Senator, I'm simply not knowledgeable about it and can't give you a knowledgeable answer.
Okay, I think those kind of actions undermine our national security significantly.
Understand.
Committee will stand in recess for 15 minutes and then reconvene, and the next questioners will be Senator Heinrich and Senator Fisher and Senator Shaheen.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.